Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Francesca Purcell, and I'm with the Department of Higher Education, and it is really wonderful to see all of you here this morning. So let me just briefly say that when we were looking at the statistics and statewide sorts of things, we came across an interesting conundrum, which was that Massachusetts leads the country in terms of college participation rates. And not only that, but Massachusetts is one of the national leaders in terms of preparedness for college. So one of the things we looked at was the NAEP scores. You all know what NAEP is, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And we kept sort of scratching our heads saying, that's interesting. If Massachusetts leads the country in college readiness, how come we have pretty much the same percentage of students as other states who test into developmental education? So for example, at the community colleges, both in Massachusetts and across the country, over 60% of students enroll in developmental education. And you know, anyway, what we think we have figured out, although we're still open to answering this question, is when we looked at the NAEP scores as a proxy for college readiness, we saw that in Massachusetts, and we just looked at one in reading. In Massachusetts, only 39% of students were college ready in reading. And we're one of the national leaders. And the national average was 36%. So even as national leaders across the country, as a country, we're still really woefully behind where we need to be. So in fact, developmental education, while we struggle with it here in Massachusetts for a long time, it really is an issue across the country. And just so you know, in Massachusetts, I said, you know, the community colleges, over 60% of students test into developmental education. And if you break it down further, you'll see that a higher percentage test into developmental math. In our urban community colleges, that's even higher. At the state universities, 20% of students are enrolled in developmental education, and at the UMass campuses, 10%. And part of this has to do with state policy around how many students can enroll at the 4 years in developmental ed. But certainly, and I think, frankly, when I was watching the registration list and I saw folks coming who registered from the state universities and from UMass, that even though they don't have quite the numbers that the community colleges do, this continues to be a challenge across all of our institutions in Massachusetts, not just at the community colleges. Also, another piece I want to bring to your attention, again, you probably don't need me to tell you this, but I think I just want to make sure that we note it, is that we see higher rates of Black and Latino students testing into developmental education, as well as higher rates from students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And these are the areas, frankly, that we really need to pay continual attention to and closing these achievement gaps if we want to keep moving the numbers on this. Finally, and I think in terms of a little bit of overall statistics, when we looked at the percentage of students who tested into developmental education who don't complete a dev ed course, they have less than this is the community colleges, they have a less than 5% chance of ever getting a degree of some sort. So, for us, for all of us, it really is an area that needs a lot of support. So anyway, so that's a little bit of the overview and some of the stats we were looking at that I wanted to briefly share with you. Okay, so I've done all my pieces, and I really want to turn it over now to really the most exciting people who are here today is Peter Adams and Nikki Edgecombe. I've had the privilege of going to a number of various conferences and meetings around the country, frankly, trying to understand more about these issues. So I get to listen to a lot of folks and going on webinars, the whole bit. And I think you're going to find both Nikki and Peter to be very interesting, very engaging. And I hope that you have the opportunity today to, again, get a few good ideas and to wrestle around some of these issues that they're going to bring up with you.